Welcome to Miracles in the Madness, where faith meets the chaos. I'm your host, Ashton Keever, and together we'll explore stories, biblical truth, and encouragement for women living in the beautiful, messy life God has called them to. Each week, we'll dive into real-life testimonies, practical encouragement, and biblical insights to help you walk faithfully through the everyday madness. Ready to get started? Let's go. Welcome back to Miracles in the Madness. I'm Ashton Keever, your host, and we are back with Lori Hancock for one more episode, hopefully maybe more in the future, but for now, we're going to be talking about ministry mishaps. So no matter what ministry you're in, especially if you're in vocational ministry, you are going to come up against challenges. And we talked about this in a couple episodes ago, but those challenges, you have to know that they're meant to grow you. They're meant to strengthen you in what you are doing with your life. And if you read through Acts or any of Paul's letters, you will know that choosing a life where you're serving God with your whole heart, your whole mind, your whole soul, your whole everything, is going to come with adversity. It's going to come with hardships. And so today, Lori is going to be vulnerable and share a little bit about that journey in her ministry and her husband's ministry with us as well. So this is a very niche episode. It's a little bit more targeted towards people who are in vocational ministry, but I think there is still so much wisdom that you can glean from this episode. So I would still encourage you to stick around and see what the Lord is going to talk to us about through this story.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Multiple times in the New Testament, since you mentioned Paul, like I'll even mention James here.
Absolutely.
It's not if you face trials, it's when. And they are going to come at you. We were just talking right before we started this podcast tonight about the different ways that Satan tried to completely derail us from what we were aiming to do here, which is to literally tell our story in a way that honors God. And like I was saying, I was stopping, I was driving, but I was intentionally focusing on praying over this as I was driving. And the second I said, okay, God, I got 2 text messages and a phone call, like all within like 5 seconds of each other. And I told Ashton that, if you don't recognize that as the enemy trying to say, don't do this, or whatever. It's, and I don't want to say that every little thing that happens, you blame on the enemy.
Right.
Because that's not true either. But I really feel strongly that he does know when God's on the move.
Absolutely.
And he will do what he can to make it all go awry. Episode 1 that we were talking about, about Satan will do everything he can to convince you that you can take care of whatever it is tomorrow.
Yep.
We were talking in another episode about how I all of a sudden became an introvert at some point in my life. And I don't know when that happened. I have always been an extrovert, like from birth up. Some point in the last 10, 15 years, I just had enough and became an introvert. And I really feel like Satan uses my mental struggles of that to derail me. Like, there will be times where I know I should go to XYZ ministry, something or other. Like even if it's meeting with my women's small group or Wednesday night church where I'm a small group leader, or even sometimes Sunday mornings, where you listen to the enemy say, does your tummy feel okay?
Right. Aren't you so tired?
Yeah. Your car was making a funny noise. Maybe you shouldn't drive it. Just any little thing that he can play on in your mind to get you to make a decision to not do something that is good. And we talked about this. James says, he who knows what is good and does not do it sins. Yeah. And so how do you wrap your whole life around all of that intentional living of, You do what is good because you know that it is good, and you don't give the enemy a foothold. So we're going to be talking about all the different hardships in ministry, and that's just one of them, that you will be attacked more. You will face more trials because you're doing the good thing. And you are serving, and Satan does not want you doing that. So, John and I got married back in 2004. We started ministry together, late 2005, which was really fast. Our ministry story is kind of unique because, we together had decided early on, like I think even before we got married, that there were like a few things that we would enjoy doing as a couple. One of them was being house parents at a children's home. Cooks and Hills Christian Ministries is the one that we had in our mind. It's kind of like Shiloh or Show Me here in Missouri. And, they have house parents that live on site that take care of kids that are in need. And so we were like, that would be great. We could do that. Another one was we wanted to be dorm parents at Ozark. We were like, we could do that. That would be great.
Yeah.
But then it was right before we got married. It was probably like 6 months before we got married. Found out that my home church camp was hiring directors, managers at that time. And John and I were like, that would be great. We could do that, and he grew up at a church camp where they actually did have live-in managers. But at my home camp, this was the first time that they had ever had somebody that was hired full-time with the intention of running the camp. And we were like, well, we can't apply because, we're not even married. Like, can't really hire a couple that,
right,
can't do that together. So we were like, well, we'll just put a pin in that one and, just keep living life. Well, so we ended up getting married, obviously, that March of 2004. And in July, we found out that couple that had been hired was resigning. They were no longer going to be there. And obviously, we were married at this time. And so we were also expecting, I guess this was 2005, yeah. We were expecting our firstborn, and we went and interviewed that October and found out that, we were a good fit and were pretty much hired on the spot. John is 100% meant to do camp ministry. At that point, even with all of his strengths and stuff, I think we were more hired on the fact that I had that credential of, growing up there. They knew who I was. My dad was on the board. They knew who he was. So, like that clout of,
right,
coming in. Best hire they could have made. He's absolutely fantastic at the job of camp ministry. And I often say that he's like in the Old Testament Bezalel, who God gifted with the ability to
build the tent.
Build. Yeah. I mean, like, it was like, when you think about the fact that Moses was up on the mountain and God showed him the plans, I don't even know what that's supposed to mean, but he came down and relayed it all to Bezalel, and Bezalel literally just did it.
Yeah.
Like, how? My brain doesn't wrap around that. John's the kind of person that can visualize things. He can look at a building and be like, that's 80 by 20, and I'm like, how do you do that? Like, he can say, I can see this here. I can see that there, and make it happen. He can watch YouTube videos and just absorb it and learn how to do something. He's super jack of all trades, and very much blessed with a gifting of being able to understand, to learn and to do things. I don't know that I have ever come across anything that he said, I'm going to learn how to do that, and not been able to do it. Like, it's unreal.
Okay, Lori, you love your husband.
I mean, it's funny because, like, you could talk to a bunch of people and they would be like, yes, that is how he is. So he was 22. Yes, when we got hired at this camp. So very young.
Yeah.
No, is that right? 23? Maybe just turned 23. And he's going to correct me on that. And So, like that was just a whole bunch of crazy to throw a young couple into, very newly married and very newly baby on the way.
Yeah.
I remember being like I had really bad anemia when I was pregnant with our first. And I remember just like having to go and lay down for half of that board meeting where they were interviewing us because I felt so sick.
Wow.
It was just like, and here they are going to hire us. But so we started that October and loved ministry from day one. Our first summer was one of those, you don't know what you don't know. And so we were living in bliss, of just doing whatever we thought should be done. As I said in one of the other episodes, we found out that summer that we were pregnant with number 2, which was a woohoo.
Right.
I cried. I told John, I said, they're going to fire us because they're going to think that they hired bunny rabbits. I was still having the postpartum emotions and, now pregnant again. And so there's only 14 and a half months between our boys, our first 2 boys. And, but God knew what he was doing. They are the best of friends. But anyway, so we have done camp ministry, for 20 total years. And there have been plenty of times where it has not been rainbows and butterflies.
Yeah.
There have been plenty of times where it has, the joyful moments. The one thing about camp ministry that I get to experience every year I know other people experience this at churches and stuff, but we see kids come back every year and we watch them grow up. And a lot of them we only see once a year. And so we see them when they're 6, we see them when they're 7, when they're 8, and we don't see the in between. So, it's like, we just get these glimpses of their life, but then when they're 12 or 13 and they make the decision to be baptized and we get to be there and watch it, sometimes they're high school age and we've known them since they were at, First Chance Camp as a first grader, and we've watched them grow up all this way to 12th grade and make the decision, to go into ministry. And we get to be a part of all of that, not just of a local church, but of, 30, 50 churches, that all send kids to camp during the summer. And it is absolutely amazing to get to be a part of that many ministries. And not only that, but the relationships that we build with our youth ministers and children's ministers and senior ministers and discipleship ministers and missions chairs, the amount of community that we have been able to build from being in camp ministry is just absolutely amazing. The way that God works through all of these little pockets of ministry John calls it the middle C church, because you've got the big C church that's like, the church. Yeah. And then you've got the little C church that's the local church. And we're the middle C church because we're like in between, we bring the local churches together, but we're not the worldwide church.
Yeah.
And so it's absolutely a blessing to get to do this ministry, even with the hard times. So I'm going to kind of jump into the story in the middle because we had actually been at our first camp for 10 years, almost exactly it was maybe 10 years and 2 weeks. And a few months before we hit that anniversary date, we were at a board meeting and the board just kind of expressed their discontent with the way that mainly John was doing ministry because I was not paid staff. I was just a helper. Mm-hmm. And so they were saying all of these things that they were unhappy with and that they didn't like, and you better fix this or we're going to have to let you go. And we were feeling very attacked, kind of look at our track record. Right. We've been here 10 years. We've grown the camp. Things are going well. We're talking about doing a building campaign, all these different things that we just felt like, where is this coming from? Yeah. Very much out of left field from our perspective. I'm sure that there were some conversations that were had that we weren't privy to that kind of stoked this flame of this idea. And the hardest part, and this is kind of going back to what I was just saying, these people were our community. They were our friends. We had been doing ministry with them as the Middle Sea Church for 10 years. And to have that feeling of just almost like betrayal, and looking back now, we 100% see God's hand in it. But at the time, in the moment, it felt devastating. We lived an hour and 20 minutes from my parents, an hour and 45 minutes from his parents. We had taken pictures of our boys in pre-K and kindergarten, knowing that these were going to be in their senior slideshows.
Yeah.
And very much being like, this is where we're going to live for like our whole lives. And when God looks at you and says, with extra capital, bold letters, exclamation mark, no, it hurts.
Yep.
And there's no other way to wrap your mind around it other than to recognize God's hand and say, even if it wasn't his plan for the pain, what did he work good out of it?
Yeah.
And so we went through the struggle of resigning in front of our entire full board, which was made up of all of the churches. It was at our annual meeting. There were probably 60 to 70 people there, and probably 50 to 60 of them had no idea that we were going to be resigning at this meeting. And when we did, one of the youth ministers asked how the boys are handling it. And I just lost it because we had nothing. Like, we were resigning with no safety net. It basically kind of almost became an ultimatum of either you resign or we're going to fire you. And we didn't want to be fired,
Right.
like that doesn't look good if you're trying to find something else to move to. And they say, well, send us your resume. Well, what happened there?
Right.
So we compromised with the executive board and said, we'll resign. And there were a lot of questions. And that's how out of left field this actually really was, because the response from everybody else who didn't know what was going on really kind of validated that for us, that this really was something that was
totally wild.
Yeah. So fast forward 10 years, where we have now been here at High Hill Christian Camp, we can look back and see a lot of things. One of the things that we often say is we feel very strongly that there was some hardening of hearts on God's part, because he wanted us to move ministries, and he had to hurt us. Literally, he had to slam a door in our face, like, wake up, I need you to move right now. Get out, go to this land that I'm going to show you. And we would not have done that on our own without that type of devastating hurt.
Yeah.
We may have done it a couple years later, but again, and this is what we were talking about in one of the other episodes, that God's timing is there for a reason. And sometimes it's a wait game, and sometimes it is definitely not. Sometimes It's a literal, I need you to do this literally right now. And you've got to obey me, or, I will make it very obvious, and again, with that whole, allusion to, the Exodus, would the people of Israel would they have left Egypt without God doing all of those signs? I know that they were slaves, but they also, when they got to the wilderness, they were like, send us back to Egypt where we had good food.
Right.
I mean, horrible place to be. Like, what are you talking about?
Oh.
But that's what they said, it was an unhealthy place for them to be, but that's all that they had known.
Right.
And so God literally had to show his mighty hand for them to leave. And I feel like he did that in our life. And so in that whole process of leaving the first camp, like I said, we did not have a safety net when we resigned. We had no idea what God was doing. And I remember feeling so stressed out for John more than anything else.
Right.
We had these conversations about, well, are we going to go move in with my parents? Which would have been interesting to say the least. But so I was up one night. I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, I need to pray about this. Mm-hmm. And I went into our living room and I just collapsed on the floor. And I just started saying, God, I don't even know what to say right now because I just need answers. Yeah. We need you to guide us. We need you to tell us where we need to go. And I was so tired and I was crying so hard that my words started not making any sense. And I am not a speak in tongues type person. I kind of don't even really believe in that. Mm-hmm. But I remember feeling like I was needing the Holy Spirit to intercede with my groans, and like I remember saying, I don't even have the words right now. I'm just going to start just pouring out my heart, however it comes out. And Holy Spirit, I need you to talk to God for me. And I have no idea how long that was. I just remember being in the living room and then all of a sudden my tears stopped and I was like, all right, time to go to bed. And I was 100% at peace and didn't worry about it again after that. It was like, all right, well, John, what did you apply for today?
Right.
But I was no longer worried. And in the midst of all of this, we are literally packing up our house. Like there are boxes everywhere because the board had told us you have until December 31st to get out. And my dad was like, hold on. They've lived in this house for 10 years. They have 3 small children at this point in 4th grade, 3rd grade, kindergarten. And my dad was like, you can't ask them to pack up and leave over the holidays. Like,
Right.
that's not right, among other things. And luckily they listened to his wisdom and they gave us till the end of January. Well, funny thing, God, again, I mean, it's like he was seriously being like, no, I want you to leave. Like,
Right.
I'm putting all of this in place and in plan because this is what I want for you. And so we had a friend in camp ministry up in West Virginia, and he had reached out to John and he said, hey, I saw that you guys are leaving. What are you doing? And John's like, we really have no plan right now. Like best case scenario, we move to Stillwater, which was going to be absolutely awful for both of us because if you know anything about Oklahoma, there is only one Oklahoma, and that's Norman, OU, and Stillwater is OSU. And we were like, God, no, please. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. We totally would have done it. But there was a power sports dealership there, and John was going to go work as a salesman and like work with some of their videography and social media and all of that. And that was the best plan that we had. We hated it. Like it was not a good plan. It was just what there was. And so when Tim had reached out to John and said, what are you doing? And John's like, I don't know. And Tim came back and said, did you hear that the position at High Hill is opening up? And John was like, no. And he goes, hasn't the other director been there for like 8-9 years? He's like, yeah, he's leaving. And John's like, are you serious? And we have a pretty tight-knit community of camp leaders. Like the Christian camping world is a very, again, to use the word niche,
Right.
but we're close. Like we're on first name basis with like I have probably half of their cell phone numbers in my phone, whether they be in West Virginia or Kansas or Florida, And so for us to not know that this guy was leaving High Hill Christian Camp, we were just like, how did we not know this? And it kind of happened. It wasn't even publicized. It wasn't on Facebook. It wasn't on their website. It just was a thing.
Right.
And so John reached out to one of the board members that he was given a contact for. And because we knew who the director was that was there, and he was like, hey, who do I need to talk to? And he was like, yeah, talk to this guy. So he reached out to him, and this was around Thanksgiving, maybe just a little bit before Thanksgiving. My parents blessed us with a trip to Branson with them just to love us for like 2 weeks, get us out of the house, get us away from the stress, and just focus on our kids a little bit, without all of the
Financial
trauma.
and
Yeah.
all
I mean,
the
and like my parents were
pressures.
just like, we're just going to take care of it, you know, like, because my dad had gone through something very similar when they left Arkansas and went to Oklahoma, you know, just knowing when God picks you up and is moving you, you do what he's telling you, even if you don't know where you're going.
Right.
And so, so we're in Branson, and he's having these conversations with the people at High Hill, and conversations are going well. And they said, all right, well, we would like for you to come in for an interview like this first week of December. And we're like, all right, we can do that, you know? And so we drive from our other camp to there is like 7 hours, you know, and we pull the boys out of school on that Friday and come down and spend the weekend. And then Monday is their board meeting. So we did an interview with them. And we're driving home that Monday night because we didn't want the boys to miss too much school, you know, so we're headed back so that they could be in school Tuesday morning. And I was also working as a para at the time. So like I was also missing school.
Yeah.
And so we're about 4 hours into our drive on the way home, and they called and said, we'd like to offer you the position. And they said, we knew you would be driving all night and that you probably would really like to have an answer. So, you know, we're just going to go ahead and let you know. And so we were like, that is super fantastic. We're really excited, you know, didn't want to wake the boys up. You know, it was like,
right.
Try to be excited without, you know, having too much emotion. And so we get home, and again, this is like mid-December, and we said, well, when do you want us to move? And they said, well, the other director, the one who's not going to be there anymore, is leaving on Christmas Eve. And we were like, so can we move in Christmas Day? And they're like, well, I mean, like, if you want to. We're like, we want to. And so God's sense of humor is just, I mean, again, remember that this other camp had told us that we needed to be out by December 31st. And we were like, what are you doing to us? That's just cruel and unusual punishment.
Right.
And yet God had us move a whole week before that. And so, again, we had everything boxed up. It was all ready to go. The hardest part of leaving was leaving the boys' school because, like I said, I was working as a para there. I had been a sub for the last 2-3 years before that. And, you know, just we knew everybody. We loved everybody. Our community was great. We loved the people at our church. And so to just leave was really, really hard. Yeah. But getting here and finding new community has been so beautiful. We are 8 hours away from my parents, 6 hours away from John's. And that part has been the hardest. It's not like moving cross country, but you know, it sure feels like it sometimes. So, you know, because we live up in the corner of Missouri, and you got to drive diagonal all the way across Missouri and then diagonal all the way across Oklahoma to get to my parents' house. It is a very long drive, and it's I-44 for the most part. Yeah. So like a lot of just, you know, the whole way too. It's not a pretty drive. It's just highway. So we went from seeing my parents roughly once a month at minimum, maybe even more, to some years we see them once. Usually it's 2 to 3 times. A good year we see them 4 or 5. But that's like on the super, super high side. And usually that's meeting them in Branson. Right. You know, it's not going home and it's not them coming here. It's like, hey, let's meet somewhere in the middle. And so I am very grateful that God gave us those 10 years. My boys know their grandparents and have a good relationship with them. And had we not lived where we did for that many years, I don't think that would have been possible. Yeah. So we moved at a good time in life, you know, and the boys are old enough that they can go be with them for summers. They pretty much did that from the time we moved. You know, they would go spend almost a whole month with them and, you know, just have that time of relationship building, you know, and my parents would spoil them to death. And then we would meet at Branson and bring them home. So, but yeah, it's just, that's been the hardest part. But we kind of talk about how God's hand is so evident in that move that we don't feel the freedom to be angry about it.
Yeah.
So, you know, there is some hurt, and there's even some maybe unresolved forgiveness that needs to happen. But for the most part, I feel like we understand that even the actions of some of those people that we called really good friends were maybe not entirely 100% them, it was God's hand causing things to happen, and working it all for his glory and for his good. And that's sometimes really hard to understand. Like, there's that tension of not knowing the mind of God, and ministry is tough like that, because you can't blame everything on the devil. You can't blame everything on God, and where in the middle does all of that fall? Was the way that the board treated us, was that 100% God? Was it 100% Satan? Was it, something in the middle? And we'll never know this side of heaven. Yeah. But I do know that where we are now is using our gifts, where we felt like we were starting to be a little bit stifled where we were. Mm-hmm. And even one of our board members, who was part of the resignation firing, whatever you want to call it, he was one of the people that the board at High Hill called as a reference, even though he wasn't put down as a reference. Good interviewers will call the people who were in charge of the place that you're leaving and say, right, why are they leaving? And he even said, John's outgrown this place. His dreams are too big for us. And, it's not a good fit anymore. Yeah. And when we got to High Hill, things were not necessarily on a decline. Like, that's not really where they were, but they were just kind of stagnant at that point. Mm-hmm. And there were a few things relationally going on that needed a little bit of help. Mm-hmm. And so John came in and recognized those right away and was able to repair some of those bridges. And now those are some of our strongest, healthiest, most supporting churches, that we have. And not only that, but the camp has gone from like just under 1,000 campers to we're at pushing 1,700 at this point. Wow. We've built I think 5, John, correct me, 5 buildings since we've been here. And, just we're already out of bunk space, even though we just built a brand new building with 56 extra beds. It's like, it's a great problem to have. But going back to what camp ministry is, since you were kind of asking that a little bit, camp ministry is basically what the early church was. Mm-hmm. the Acts 2 church of living together, breaking bread together, fellowshipping together, and sharing everything, even sometimes when you don't want to, with your cabin mates. It's what the early church was experiencing, which is why it is so effective. Because you live in community with people for maybe 2 days, maybe 5 days. It depends on your age, but you gain that sense of what it looks like to literally live in community with other believers. And you have, like we were talking about with Bible college, it's like this little fishbowl of a microwave, and you develop relationships so much faster because you are spending all day together. And you're growing together, you're learning scripture together, you're worshiping together.
Shared relationships.
Yes, absolutely. You're doing everything in a group, in a community. And it is absolutely fascinating the way that we think it's something new and, all this stuff. And no, it's happened since, literally day one of the church starting. And, to get to watch these campers grow in community like that and come back year after year. And we have some campers that will request bunkmates from other churches because one time they got put together and they built that strong of a relationship that they're like, I want to be with them every year when I come back now, and like I said, getting to watch kids grow up from day one, their very first day of camp, to graduating as a senior and going into ministry or getting married. The amount of graduation announcements that we get, or wedding invitations, or, hey, can I use you as a reference, That's awesome. Or the kids that are like, I came and I served as a junior counselor. Can I put you down as, something for my A+ service hours, And we're like, absolutely. We've gotten to know these kids so well that they feel like we're part of their community. And High Hill is a special place to them because of that. And so we do a lot of things besides summer camp too. Like you talked about, that we've got a women's retreat in every spring. We're getting ready to start a seniors day and a men's retreat and also a minister's retreat. So we're, working on trying to get all of this, focused more than just on campers or just on retreats in the off season. Because we want to be that place that is the Acts 2 church for the Middle C Church. And so again, coming along with hardships because, we talked about this earlier, the ministry pipeline is not being fed, like there aren't people going into camp ministry, probably because half of them don't even know it exists. But,
right.
It's not something that you go to college and get a degree for. It's just kind of not. John actually started out at Ozark getting his music degree and then was like, no. And then he moved to preaching. He's like, no. And then he was going to do youth ministry. At that point, I was like, hold up. Like, let's stop taking out student loans until we kind of figure out what's going on. So it ended up working out because that fall that he didn't take classes was the fall that we got hired at our first camp. And we were able to move freely because we were not tied down by school or anything. So yeah, it's been a wild ride of watching God move in unexpected ways, but also being able to have the ministry of being at home because, when you work and live at home, you are with your kids all the time. Good or bad? I don't know. But yeah, so our kids grew up with me being a stay-at-home mom, even though I was, for all intents and purposes, working, in the ministry. And, but I could do most of that from home. And so that was a major, major blessing. And John was able to come home every day for lunch. We have lunch at home unless we're, out running to Lowe's or something, but we have lunch at home like every day together. And I go home at like 11 and fix lunch. He comes home at noon and we sit and we watch a show, and it's just part of our daily rhythm and routine of getting to do this type of life together. And the other hardships just kind of fade, when you realize you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And we say all the time, we really don't want God to move us again. Like, we're really happy where we are, but now that we know what the other side looks like, it makes it a little bit easier to trust when he says no with big capital letters, bold exclamation mark, and to just know that he's got our best in mind and in his ministry mindset of where he wants us. So
I think, there's just so many pieces of that, of your story that I think we could touch on, but I just think, what you just said is really powerful. And it's, something that I think grows with spiritual maturity. As you become a little bit more mature in your Christian walk, you start to see, I think it's easier to see God's hand, and it's easier to see his plans in action, and
to recognize when he's moving.
Yeah. Exactly. Some people are like, oh, count your blessings. And I counted my blessings my whole life, but, counting them and recognizing where I've been blessed is great. But I was never putting together the way that the blessings sometimes fit together to see that God was working it all out for my good, And
sometimes you can't even recognize that. You have to have somebody else point out, connect the dots for you, to be like, did you notice? And you're like, I did not. And wow, because, or, you have conversations like this And all of a sudden you go, I didn't even realize that God had worked that way until I said it out loud.
Absolutely. And I think you said something there at the end about mindset, or maybe it was just my brain filling in the blanks. But, I think like recognizing God in all of it and choosing to see the good over the bad, or allowing the positive to outweigh the negatives. It is a little bit of a mindset. And, recently at my job, I've actually had a lot of workplace trauma. I won't go into that. I'll spare all of you my therapy notes. But I've had a lot of workplace trauma. None of it that you would say like fits under the big abuse titles or anything like that, but just like really manipulative situations. So that make me have a hard time trusting people at their word. And sometimes
have you questioning yourself.
Absolutely.
Like, is this point valid?
Snaps for you, Lori. Yes, that is exactly what it feels like. Imposter syndrome is a big part of my life. And I got burnt a few times in those places, and haven't been very happy in my job for a couple years, but the last year was especially rough. And every time I would start looking for a different job, I just like really felt this pull to like, nope, that's not it. That's not the answer. And I'm like, what is the answer? Because I don't like this. I hate this. I don't want to be here anymore. And I remember, I guess it was just before Christmas. There was a Christmas work party. Something happened that I was one of a couple people who got forgotten about. We got left out of like a funny award ceremony or whatever. And my feelings were really hurt. I was really trying not to let my feelings get hurt because I knew that it was not malicious. It really was actually about location, why we got forgotten about. But as much as I tried, as much as I tried to not let my feelings get hurt, they were hurt. And I took some time to think about it, but I'm pretty sure it was on my drive home that day. I was crying out to God. I was literally crying over work, but I was crying in my car, and just like, because it wasn't just work where life felt completely out of control and chaotic. We had a lot of stuff going on at our church at that time. We had like kids doing kid things. Like it was just everywhere. Chaos, just everywhere chaos. And I was just crying out to God. And I remember saying, God, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like, no, I'm not going to kill myself. Like not that I don't know if I can do this anymore, but it was just like, I'm trusting you. And I feel just, I've reached my limit. Whatever you want me to learn, I'm trying to learn it. I'm calling out to you. I'm praying to you every day. I'm trying to continue this relationship, but I don't know what's going on anymore. And I'm running out of steam. And I think it was that night, or maybe even right at that conversation, that in my mind, it was just check your perspective. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to handle the things that I can handle. I'm going to do the things that I can do. And I decided
just do the next good thing.
Exactly. The next good thing. And so I just decided, you know what? I've been fighting the opportunity to go work over at a different building a couple days a week. I'll take that opportunity. I mean, they asked me 9 months prior to this and were kind of encouraging me to do it. And I said, well, I don't really need to. I'm comfortable where I am. God doesn't care about my comfort.
Right.
And I tell you what, like the first of the year, I started going over to that other building, and I have friends at work that I didn't have before and that make it fun to be there. And no matter how frustrating or hard the job is now, even that one small change and that one like little trust, my team and my relationship with my team is better now too. And I never would have seen God's hand moving in it if I didn't know him the way I do now. Mm-hmm. And the same goes for my podcast. I've told that story before. And if you haven't heard it and you want to go back and listen to it, I encourage you to. I'll link it in the show notes. But the whole looking back and seeing God, it's the writing your testimony out. If you've never done that, I would encourage you to do it. And I would encourage you to do it. You don't have to do it every year, but do it more than once.
Absolutely.
Because your testimony doesn't stop just because you stopped writing it that day.
And don't be scared of the word testimony. It
Absolutely.
Literally is just your story. Like, if you were to write an autobiography, what would your chapters be called? Just start there and bullet points. I did this. I felt this. I grew here. I totally messed up here, and just flesh it out, because there's way more. My mom all the time says, I always feel bad when people say, what's your testimony? Because she goes, I don't have a story. And I was like, Mom, are you kidding me?
Right.
Like, and she goes, well, like it's not an impressive. And I'm like, sometimes the most mundane stories, or what you feel is mundane, are the things that are going to resonate the most with other people.
Absolutely.
Like
yes.
The madness and the chaos, it's like all of these little things that everybody relates to. You don't have to be a drug addict who had like this super big come to Jesus moment to have a story that people want to hear. Because in all honesty, that's not relatable for most of us. The relatable part is, like we were saying, when you want to look at your kids and go, I love you, but I don't like you right now. Mm-hmm. How many people can relate to that? Like pretty much every mom, I'm sure at some point has really felt like, I don't want to be around my children right now.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. And I think there's so much shame around that. And especially in today's culture, it's like, if you say something like that out loud, suddenly you are like a neglectful parent or whatever. Like that's the narrative, right? Like I just don't buy into it. And but I think what I've learned in my spiritual maturity, and growth, sometimes you have to just do it scared. Mm-hmm. Most of the time you're going to have to just do it scared.
Yeah. I hate the saying, fake it till you make it. But it's true for the most part. I mean, like we talk all the time about how with our first child, we'll even say, kiddo, right, you were the first 20-year-old that we've parented. Like we're learning this right along with you. Like I remember how things were when I was your age, but it's not the same as parenting somebody who's your age. Teaching you how to go to the DMV is totally different than learning how to go to the DMV, Right.
And it's totally different now than it was when you learned.
Absolutely.
So it's like you're almost learning at the same time as you're teaching them.
Yeah. And so, like we're baby parents just as much as, when we brought him home from the hospital, it's very much a learn as you go for the rest of your stinking life, and even when you're grandparents, you have to relearn all of that because having a grandbaby is not the same as having a baby.
No,
not that I would know, but like it really is. And ministry is the exact same thing. Every day that you do something is learning something new. Yeah. Some new something is going to happen no matter how mundane it feels like Groundhog Day all the time. But it really is something different, and allowing God to open those doors and those windows to recognize those things and to see His fingerprints on everything is so very important because it's validating. Mm-hmm. You need to see God work to be able to continue to do this every day. And that's what we pray for a lot, is God, show us where you're working, show us where you're moving, and move us with you, and we know sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes it's hurtful because like we do make mistakes, even in ministry, like there's times where you mess up this or that or the other, or you accidentally say something in front of the wrong person. You mispronounce somebody's name during a prayer, like you forget somebody's name that's on your board, you just, it just happens, because again, we are all human, and those of us in ministry are on display, all the time, and expected to live to a higher standard, even though we shouldn't. We shouldn't be scrutinized that way. However, that said, I think we talked about this when we were having lunch, when we were talking about the podcast. Paul does talk about, that we are on a pedestal because we did make the decision to go into ministry. And he says, not everyone should do this lightly, right, because you will be judged more harshly. And he's not talking about people. He's talking about, spiritual judgment. And so we are held to a higher standard, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to mess up.
Right.
And that we shouldn't be offered grace when we do. And hopefully I've offered that grace, to others. I'm sure that I have failed in that point as well, because again, we're all human. And sometimes humans are very judgy people. Okay, a lot of times humans are very judgy people, especially in this world with social media and everything, where whatever mistake you made is all of a sudden out there for everybody to see. So, I encourage you, if you've been somebody that has been judged, to just remember that you are still a child of God, and God still loves you. God made you, and he made you on purpose.
Yeah.
And so to stay literally on purpose, because he still has a job for you to do. And that job is going to be there until the day you die. You don't retire from being a Christian. And even, especially Christians in ministry, don't retire. Like you might not be standing in front of a Sunday school class anymore, or in front of a pulpit, or, leading the women's small group ministry, or whatever it is that you're doing. You may have, quote, quote, retired from that, but that doesn't mean that your ministry ends.
Yeah.
And this is true of anybody, regardless of whether they're in vocational ministry or not. You are called to be a minister of the gospel and to live your life as such. And that's hard. I fail at that a lot. And, only by God's grace and mercy does he allow me to continue to be in this ministry that I love. Even though I make mistakes and, sometimes hope that people don't find out the mistakes that I've made, and so I think we've all been there, because life is just life, and we're just all doing the best we can.
Right. We're not perfect, because if we were, we wouldn't have needed a savior. Mm-hmm. Like we're imperfect, and that's the point. Mm-hmm. So, Lori, so what can, I've got a couple questions for you. Number one, what can the podcast listeners be praying about for your ministry and your family, High Hill Christian Camp? And then my second question is, if people feel called to send a donation or anything financially, how can they do that?
So we are actually in a growth phase right now at the camp, which is fantastic, but we only have 4 people on staff, and we really need 5. We're praying for 6. We are really praying for a ministry-driven family to be able to come to the camp and work alongside us, somebody with some ministry passion and experience, but also that can handle some of the maintenance side of our job. John has been working alongside Charlie to get a lot of our maintenance stuff done at the camp, but that requires them to step away from some of their main duties, which obviously for John being the director means a little less fundraising and a little less church involvement. And for Charlie, that means not being able to be as involved with the summer camp programming as he should be and needs to be. And so, we've got things kind of divvied up amongst the 4 of us full-time staff, but we would really like to be able to hire this position. We did have somebody in that position, but they retired last summer. And so, we're just looking to fill that again. And so praying that God just brings the right person to us. Somebody was like, have you found anybody yet? And we're like, no, because we're just kind of trusting God to bring this person to us. We've got it posted a couple different places that we know have this specific outreach, but there's been some peace about God having us in the waiting right now, which is really kind of weird. I kind of equate this back to my story with John, of whoever he's got coming for us isn't ready to be here yet. So we're just kind of in that limbo of waiting right now to either prepare us or prepare them. I'm not really sure which one it is, but we're just in a holding period. So that God is preparing either us or them, whichever it is that is needing the preparation to come to High Hill and to serve alongside us in this beautiful ministry of camp. And so that's one thing. The other thing, obviously, is, with the growth, it just means that, like I said, we've been building. We took on a loan to be able to expand the camp. And the camp is being able to support that loan financially right now. But we've got other things that are coming up that we really need to be able to do. And that loan is dragging us down right now because we aren't able to put the money towards other things. So one of the things is we're needing to basically replace our pool because our pool is undersized for our camp, but it's also fairly deep at the shallow end. It's like a 4 foot on the shallow end, which for our little kindergartner and first grader campers, that's way too high.
Yeah.
Like they can't touch bottom and breathe, which,
right.
That's not good.
Right.
So luckily we have life jackets, but, and then we're also wanting to pave, our entire campus, the drive and the main parking lot. Couple of different reasons. One is to help preserve our buildings because the amount of dirt and dust that gets trafficked into all of our buildings is wearing down our floors more quickly. It's also just gumming up everything, like all the asphalt dirt that gets into all of our filters and our vents, just makes things not last as long. And then also our campers who bring rolling luggage, and they drag it across gravel. I'm sure that we make parents not very happy every summer when they, see their kids dragging their luggage along these great big rocks. And so, we're wanting to do that. But it's also going to help us open up our ministry to different abled people.
That's what I was going to ask, is if it would make it a little bit more accessible.
Absolutely. And, like I talked about, that we're wanting to do a seniors day, like that's going to be a big thing for that, because mobility issues and rocks don't mesh.
Yeah. No.
And so, we've got these two great big things in the works. We also have other projects that we've been working on for the last few years. Like we are still working on putting in a giant zip line, and we just purchased, we're actually in the process of purchasing a property right next door to us so that we have more room for staff housing. Just all these things that, ministry takes dollars, and it's not fun to talk about. Like our preacher just preached this Sunday on giving, on tithing. He says, and like people get real weird when you ask for money. And I don't want to make anybody feel that way. But at the same time, we can't continue to do this unless there are generous people out there who see the value in the ministry. And that's one thing that I kind of came to this realization this last year. I was talking with another camp director family, and they were talking about the same thing, the finances of the camp and everything. And I said, the difference between any ministry that is not the church, people make a decision to give to that. It's not like their normal Sunday tithe, that you feel obligated to give. This is an offering. It is something that they see value in your ministry and are willing to put their money where their heart is.
Yep.
And we love those people who recognize the value of Christian camping and who want to see this ministry continue. We've been there since 1954. Well, I mean, not John and I personally, but the camp has been. So, we're like coming up on a lot of years. I didn't do the math. I should know these answers, but we're doing ministry on a daily basis there. And for the people who support us financially, they are seeing that value and they are pouring into the kingdom with their dollars. And it doesn't always have to be the dollars. It can be somebody who is like, you know what? I have my license in electrical work. I have my license in paving, can I come out and help you guys get this sidewalk section done or this paving section done? Or can I help build this or that? Can I work on plumbing for you? Can I repair your HVAC? Things that cost the ministry money, that is something that somebody's willing to do either for free or even for a reduced rate, is just as valuable to us as somebody who gives us $10,000. If you can give us $10,000 worth of labor for free or reduced,
right.
That's as big to us as anything else. So those are the things that we need and look for and pray that God provides for us. And he has never let us down ever. It's absolutely amazing when God puts people into your path and into your conversations that are the people that you need right at that moment. And that know somebody that can do that. So you asked about how people can give. If they just go to highhillcamp.org, there is a Give Now button there. And there's also contact information for us, summer camp information, different information about retreats. There's also information about using our camp for retreats, which I'm going to kind of give a caveat on that. We only rent out the camp for spiritual style retreats. So like something with your church or with your women's ministry, your men's ministry, things that have a definite spiritual tilt. Because you do have to say that you agree to our statement of faith and everything, but it's also because we are there for ministry purposes. And we want to continue that focus of the reason we're here is to further God's kingdom. And so, if you've got a women's retreat or a men's retreat or elders, leadership, anything, and you would like more information about that, it's also on the website there. Just contact Melissa and she will get you all that information. So
awesome. Thanks so much for everything, Lori. I think that we've had some really great conversations, and I'm just looking forward to how they will impact the whole world, really. Right. I mean, anybody in the whole world can listen to these. So I just really appreciate you coming on. And I think this is totally a God thing. When I was doing my vision casting at the beginning of the year, I didn't know you.
No, yeah.
But as I was writing my stuff down, God was like, who helps run High Hill Camp? And I was like, yeah, who does that?
Zach.
I know. I was like, well, do I ask Zach? And so I looked up High Hill. I know. Well, I looked it up online. I said, Zach, is Lori are the Hancocks the ones that run the camp? He goes, oh yeah, Lori's great. You'd really like her. You guys are like the same person. And I was like,
Which is funny because I don't feel like I know Zach that well. And so I went back when you told me that Zach said that, and I went back to John and I was like, what kind of impression have I made on this guy? This is so funny. But yeah, like I said, I'm a lot. So
I think he just sees the independent and not afraid to be authoritative if needed, maybe the get her done style. Mm-hmm. He probably sees that.
Oh yeah. I can stop the whole dining hall with a, hey campers, really loud.
That's probably what it is.
Yeah. So yeah.
He can recognize my traits anywhere. So, but it was so crazy because I had never met you. I didn't even really know your name. But it just popped in my head and I was like, okay.
Yeah. And 4 podcasts later.
Yeah.
We're like,
here we are.
Besties for the resties.
For real. So anyway, I just really appreciate you being on the podcast, and hopefully you'll be back on someday and we'll talk about something else. I don't know.
We'll make our husbands talk next time.
Yeah, that'd be fun. So, all right. Well, with that being said, you already got to hear Lori's verse that she lives by in Habakkuk 3, right there at the end. So you can go back and check that out. I'm not going to ask her to read it again here, but I think we're going to pray it out. I think let's pray it out. And I just would encourage you to continue to look. We talked about counting your blessings. Do that, but don't forget to recognize who they're coming from. Really remember
and
that.
Also to count the hard things too. Yeah. Because sometimes those are the blessings, you know, the really super hard moments that are giving you cause to grow, you know, and if you can recognize that as God's hand, and I don't know, I'm like, again, going to show my age. There's a really old Disney movie called Pollyanna. And it is all about this girl who sees the positive in everything. And always, no matter what's going on, will flip it on its head, you know, and say, well, we should be thankful that, you know, this. And that's something that you can always do, no matter what's going on in your madness and your chaos, you know, to look for that little miracle, to find it and to say, where is God working in this right now? Even though I'm so frustrated that I just hit a deer with my car, like what's the miracle here? What is God doing? What can come from this that is good, and pleasing and perfect and holy? And, you know, God can do it. And we were just talking about, you know, Moses up on the mountain. Jesus is enough. And he is there and willing to work the miracles in your madness and your chaos.
Absolutely. And thanks for stealing my last line.
Absolutely.
So, all right, let's pray it out. So, God, I just thank you so much for this time with Lori. And I pray that her story could bless many, many hearts, and maybe even lead people into ministry for you, God. So I just pray that you would use her story through this podcast to do more good work for your kingdom. It's in Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen. Hey, I want to invite you to Miracles in the Madness community. It's a free, private Facebook group for women and moms trying to walk out their Christian faith together. In this group, we support one another, we share scripture, pray together, and just generally have a community of support and growth and discipleship together. You don't have to do this alone, so come on and join us. There's a place for you too. Thank you for listening to Miracles in the Madness. I hope today's episode encouraged you and reminded you that even in the chaos, God is present and faithful. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with a friend who might need a little encouragement today. This helps more listeners like you find this podcast. You can connect with me and find devotionals, resources, and faith-filled tools to support your walk with God at ashtonkiever.com. You can also follow along on social media or join the community where we continue these conversations and walk this journey together. Remember, God is still writing your story. He's working in your everyday moments, and you are never alone in the beautiful chaos of motherhood.